Welcome to the 29th episode of the second season of The Pulpiteer. I'm your host, Eric Hepburn, and I'm glad to have you join us for this week's episode. Today's episode is called The Wall and the Tunnel. This week we'll begin with our Great World House segment and then turn to the word of wisdom delivered by Jamie Moore.
We pause to honor the great world house of which we are a part, lifting up the needs, the hopes, and the voices beyond these doors. Now, I keep making digressions from the usual here, but I'm going to go out on a limb this morning and say that there probably isn't anybody here who's thinking, if I could just hear one more news report about what's going on in the world, that would really fill my cup today. So I'm going to stand out on that limb and I'm going to talk about something a little different. There's a reflection of the micro and the macro. So we're going to take the Great World House and bring it home this morning. Because today is the first day of my third year with y'all. Time flies when you're having fun. I hope that you're having some reasonable proportion of the amount of fun that I'm having doing this. Some of you let me know that you are, and I appreciate that. But 2 years ago today, I had my first sermon in this pulpit as your halftime minister. And we talked about 3 prophets. We talked about Jesus. We talked about Marshall Rosenberg, who is the creator of nonviolent communication. And we talked about Alfie Kohn, who's an education researcher who has shown through research that sticks and carrots don't work. That the core of what we mistakenly want to think of as compliance is really about deepening and creating trusting relationships. So that's how we started together 2 years ago. And last year, I sat up here and I gave you a sermon letting you know that the honeymoon was over. Anybody remember that one? Said the honeymoon is over. It has been a good honeymoon. I've enjoyed it. I think that we had our fun times together, as you should, on honeymoon. But over the next year, you will start to see some conflicts arise. Some things that people put on the back burner that are going to come to the fore. And you might be tempted to think of those conflicts as, oh my gosh, I thought everything was going well, but it's not. And I invited you to think of them in a different way. Conflict is the nature of a relationship asking to deepen. Conflict is the nature of a relationship asking to deepen. That thing that was comfortable on the back burner for a little while isn't comfortable there anymore, and something that is important to you that you decided it was okay that it wasn't getting met, suddenly it matters again to you. And that's normal and natural and okay to take that thing off the back burner and say, hey, this thing that we haven't been paying attention to needs some attention now. It needs some love now. And so conflict is not things going wrong. It's things going right. A willingness to feel safe enough and brave enough to show up and say, I love you and I'm not getting all my needs met. Like, whoa, that's a brave space. That's not a failure, folks. That is a deep success. It's a deep success to feel like you can stand up and say that. Amen? All right. That part of our journey is not over. It never ends. You only get one honeymoon. One honeymoon per relationship. So it'll happen again. It'll come up again. There'll be some conflict. I'm going to preach you another message today. I realized I was sitting up here and Candace introduced the new theme for the month, and I realized, oh heck, it's the first Sunday of the month and I'm supposed to be preaching on the Soul Matters theme, but I'm not. Because my anniversary is more important to me. And I will claim the right of what I need to talk about. But I am grateful to be here with y'all, to be in relationship with y'all. And when it comes up, I am grateful to be in conflict with y'all. Because I don't see it as a fight that's got to have a winner and a loser. I see it as an invitation to do the thing that we talk about every time we light the chalice: mature and deepen, grow and heal. It's an opportunity for all those things. So, don't be shy about your voice. If the way that we are doing worship has been working for you and it starts not working for you, speak up. Give me a call. We'll go have coffee. I have become a deep believer in the Bodhisattva vow. And the Bodhisattva vow is a Buddhist thing, and it says this. It says that the monastic, all by themselves off in the wilderness, only achieves a simulacrum of enlightenment. They only achieve a partial version of it, because the truest and deepest enlightenment can only happen together. We are all getting there together, or none of us are getting there. So your voice is not tertiary to the process. It is process. Your willingness to surface something that's uncomfortable, something that is working great for you or is not working great for you, those matter deeply. So that's my invitation to you for this Great World House segment today.
Let us enter a still place within, opening our hearts and minds to receive this voice of wisdom. After the words are spoken, we will breathe together in silence, preparing ourselves for the word unfolding among us. Today's voice of wisdom comes from Eckhart Tolle. All religions are equally false and equally true, depending on how you use them. You can use them in the service of the ego, or you can use them in the service of the truth. If you believe only your religion is the truth, you are using it in the service of the ego. Used in such a way, religion becomes ideology and creates an illusory sense of superiority, as well as division and conflict between people. In the service of the truth, religious teachings represent signposts or maps left behind by awakened humans to assist you in spiritual awakening, that is to say, in becoming free of identification with form.
This image, Petra Archaeological Park in southern Jordan. Revelation for me sometimes comes in a visual way, but this comes the closest to representing what I see in my mind and heart's eye when I'm contemplating the relationship between the normal world we inhabit every day and the spiritual world, the world of unity with the divine, that all spiritual practice and religions point at. So let me unpack it in the following way. I'd like you to look and see that there's only one entrance here. And we're going to invite you back to sometime thousands of years before the AD era when this was carved. And I want you to imagine in the middle of that single door, there used to be a small cave or a crevice, a natural feature, if you will. Now, in some of the oldest recorded spiritual practices among shamanic people, there is a practice called journeying that is done in the accompaniment of a drum. And you go and sit at the mouth or the entrance to a dark cave or a crevice or a feature of nature, and you meditate and focus on that while you begin playing, drumming that resonates with the beating of your own heart. And after some time of taking in the visual of this real place, you close your eyes and imagine yourself moving into and through that space. Now, that can be an effective method for some people, not for everybody. One of the reasons that there's such a beautiful diversity of spiritual practices across the world is that it is not a one-size-fits-all kind of proposition where every spiritual practice works for every person, right? Part of the beauty of the diversity of the thing is that some of us need something different. It's why you can't have a worship service without some powerful music, because powerful music is an entree for some people to get to a place where they can connect to the deep oneness that we're yearning after. Some people, lucky for me, like words, because that's my craft. And so luckily for some folks, listening to words and hearing them can produce that. Obviously, from the history of world religions, ritual is another thing that does that, right? For some people, having a ritual that they can repeat every week in a reliable way helps them relax into a place where they can feel that connection. But here's the point that I want to make today. This beautiful facade and the building inside this mountain started off as something less inviting. It started off as a dark cave that you could crawl through, and you would emerge on the other side, Indiana Jones style, with cobwebs in your hair, dirt on your pants, the taste of fungus in your mouth. And that was the religious experience of our earliest forebears who found a way through the wall between our world and the spirit world. And they came back and left us some signposts, like Eckhart Tolle said. They left us some signposts that said, hey, I had this deep spiritual experience that made me realize the oneness of all things, the oneness of all creation, and it changed the way that I'm capable of loving you and the way I'm capable of loving myself and caring for that bright green verdant world out there. All of that changed in me when I made it through the wall to the other side. All of it changed in ways that I couldn't foresee or predict. A world that felt shallow and sepia tone before now feels vibrant and colorful. This metaphor that I used about Aristotle's cave the last time I was up here sharing with you all, this is a reminiscent echo of that. If all you have seen is shadows on the cave wall cast by firelight, it is a disorienting experience to walk into a world saturated with color and natural beauty and realize the deep interconnectedness of all of it. And when you have that moment, it is almost impossible to be content holding that knowledge alone. You want to go back and say, no, brother, sister, sibling, wake up. Let me undo your shackles. Come outside with me. Let me show you. That's the tunnel. The tunnel are ways through the wall so that we can experience that spiritual unity that miraculously changes the way we look at ourselves, each other, and the world that we exist in. It adds dimension and depth and beauty and color, and nature no longer feels red and tooth and claw like something that's out to get us. It feels like your deepest soulmate who has just called you back in to a wedding. But there's a danger here, and the danger is part of what I want to talk about. So we've got our early intrepid spiritual explorers who crawl through the dark, damp cave. They experience something fantastic. They come back out to this side. They try to reintegrate among normal people, which is incredibly hard to do when you don't look at the world the same way they do anymore. When what seemed important to you mere days or hours ago suddenly feels trivial, but you know it's still the nucleus around which their lives revolve. And you're trying to tell them, oh, no, that's not the real sun. The real sun's over here. So you get prophets getting murdered. You get the normal unfolding of things. But some of them convince people to come after, and they go through the tunnel. They have the experience. They come back out. They are now disciples. They are now fellow prophets. They are now like, no, I saw it. Yes, you're right. We got to find a way to get more people through the tunnel because it would change everything. It would change everything. So, being the good civil engineering humans that we are, we begin our tunnel expansion projects, known broadly as religions, the institutionalization of spiritual practice. So, we get out our bulldozers and our shovels and our picks, and we begin widening the tunnel so that traversing it is not so hard. And sometimes we have negative unintended consequences. Sometimes there was an important landmark or plant or something in the tunnel, a batch of lichen, a sparrow's nest, accidentally destroyed by the construction, and suddenly the signpost that we had for how to get through the tunnel can get obscured. And because civil engineering is its own form of joy, says the former civil engineer, some people are like, well, this wider tunnel is all good and fine, but it would be really nice if there were some places for people to sit. Maybe some rooms where we could prepare a food or a feast, and a place where people could lay down and take a rest, and maybe an altar. How about some artwork? We could have some artwork. We could turn this tunnel into an amazing and beautiful building. And then some other people came along. These were not civil engineers. These were architects. And they were like, okay, but if we really want to attract a lot of people to our tunnel, I think it has to look really beautiful on the outside. I think we've got to build some facade here, a sense of grandeur and elegance and something that really draws people in and lets them know that there's something important here. And so we spend hundreds of years carving the facade of our religion, of our denomination, into something grandiose and spectacular and beautiful. Are you starting to smell the scent of danger? Are you starting to smell the sense that at some point in our obsession with making the entrance grandiose and the tunnel accommodating, we might have forgotten the point, which was to get through the wall? As a matter of fact, we even see evidence in some religions and traditions that at some point in the unfolding of this process, they decided that they had just better set guards at the final portal entrance. And that certain people had the right to go through the portal and come back and report, but maybe not everybody else, because what if their accounts conflicted? One could make the argument that the infallacy of the Pope is such a structure. But you see it in leadership. I was at the Mormon temple about 20 years ago. And you walk the spiral and you see the history of their religion. And we get to the top and there's one of the acolytes there to answer questions. And the acolyte was there and I said, I really respect the fact that y'all stayed open to prophecy. You didn't say, oh, Nicaea happened, no more prophecy. All the prophecies that matter are written. We're done. Canon closed. I said, but I'm curious about something. So you guys stayed open for a little longer, but how do you stay open now? You know what they told me? Oh, well, now prophecy comes through the leader of our religion. And I said, hold on. Are you telling me that you believe that you have tamed and institutionalized prophecy? Well, yeah. Okay, I've heard enough. I've heard enough. Anybody here ever mistaken a tamed lion for a wild one? They are no longer the same thing. Prophecy is not to be tamed. It is a reassertion of the wild that is in us and around us, shaking us out of the complacency of the comfort of our built structures. I don't think you can institutionalize prophecy. It's the voice from outside that says, I think you're spending too much time on the facade. I think you're a little too worried about making the kitchen nice and a little not worried enough about finding a way to get more people through the tunnel. Because the transformed people from the spiritual journey is what creates the heaven on earth here and now that all the prophets, including the one today, is dedicated to, spoke of. Eckhart Tolle says something that I've been struggling with recently. He says that the first experience of spiritual awakening happens by grace, not by effort. And maybe it's because of my job, but I just deeply want him to not be right about that. I deeply want him to not be right about that because I still want to imagine that through some magical control I can exert, or the right teaching, or the right workshop, or the right ritual in the space, I can make that happen for you. Because helping you find your own way through the tunnel is my heart's deepest desire. Helping you connect to that sense that every night I spent alone in anguish, believing I was alone and unloved, was a lie. That universe out there is not an uncaring, cold, dead place. It loves me. It loves me. Just as I am, flawed, and all of it. It loves me. You deserve to know that. I spent too many years of my life not believing such a thing could be true. And I want you to well up in tears when you hear me say it. But I can see for many of you that it's still the tears of fear that it might not be true. Of how frightening it is to think that there is a love like that out there that cares about you, whose flourishing is not separate from your flourishing. whose desire for completeness and harmony, for joy and grief, but also for us to stop being each other's biggest problem. To stop waging war and being greedy and just doing all the dumb stuff that the prophets have been telling us about. I mean, how many thousand years do we need? How many thousands of years do we need to heed the messages? Apparently, at least this many. At least this many thousands of years, because we ain't there yet. So now I'm going to tell you an Easter story. I'm going to pivot. I think I've covered the first 3 bullets in my outline. And now I'm going to tell an Easter story. I don't think my experiences are unique because I see them replicated in storytelling, from cinema to books. I want to talk about getting dressed up for Easter Sunday morning as a child. Now, here's the way I see it mostly unfolding from my own experience and from what I see represented in books and film. I'm imagining from the broadness of that it might resonate with some of your own personal experiences. So there's a cultural expectation that you get dressed up for Easter. You go out, you buy a new outfit. You don't go play in the mud on your way to church. We've all heard all the tropes that land that way. But here's what I want to say. There is a way to do that that's about the tunnel and getting through the wall. But the way that we experienced it and the way I'm describing it now is all about building facades. Because the sousant of it, the feeling tone of it was, stay clean or the neighbors are going to think badly of us. The sousant was, you get dressed up to show that you're elect. And you show up to church, everybody nice and prim and proper and on their best behavior, to show that we are the ideal model family and to project that. And when you as a small child began to deviate from that script, the response was usually not loving correction. It was usually anxiety provocation. Does that resonate for anybody? Anxiety provocation. Somebody's going to think that our family is not among the best of the families, or that we're not as wealthy as other families, because somehow in the history of a religion created by a guy who said you could get a camel through the eye of a needle before you can get a rich man into heaven, we somehow created the prosperity gospel. We somehow decided that if you are doing good financially, it's because you were chosen by God. Man, we are capable of tremendous inversions, folks. So, a religion by a guy who said that about wealth and needles and camels turns into a set of practices where families are spending more than they can afford to buy clothes to impress their neighbors, and they're teaching their kids that the holiday is about social status and standing and respectability, instead of about learning the lessons of the guy who started the whole thing. Now, I know I'm wearing a t-shirt today. That's for a different reason. We'll talk about that later. I want to invite you to this thought. We don't have to abandon or ridicule these practices. There's another pathway. I'm not saying it's the right pathway. I'm not saying you have to pick it, but I want you to be able to imagine it so I will describe it for you. There was a man who made it through the wall. And he came back and taught us things about loving one another and loving our enemy and kindness and compassion. And those things tried to change the world. To honor his teachings once a year, we will go and we will each of us pick out an outfit that we think calls to us as ourselves in angelic form. The best version of ourselves that we can imagine. We will go and we will, with mindfulness and some solemnity, select this outfit. And in the morning, on Easter morning, before we go to church, we will bathe. And our family will anoint each other with oil. And we will put on this outfit that reminds us that there is a way through the wall, and the teachings we bring back matter deeply to us individually, to our community, to the thriving of all life as we know it. These teachings matter. And we are celebrating that. And we are showing honor to that by buying a special outfit, by using a special kind of care and attention to show up to this day, to decide that this day is special and sacred and holy because we make it so with our attention. And when your 4-year-old daughter is walking and she falls and trips, and there's now a beautiful green grass stain right on the white fabric of her knee, she just brought Mother Gaia into the place. She didn't mess up. She didn't sully the ceremony. She added depth to the ceremony by bringing nature into it with her. There is a different way we can do all of this. I want you to see it with me. Brené Brown says this. She says, fitting in is the opposite of belonging. Fitting in is self-erasure in pursuit of conformity. But belonging is the innate human desire to be part of something larger than us. True belonging only happens when we present our most authentic selves to the world. So, I am not opposed to tunnel widening. I'm not opposed to altars or rituals. And they are not in and of or by themselves. They have a purpose to connect us to that deeper thing that we all yearn for. That deeper thing that until we experience it, we're afraid might not exist. And the Bodhisattva was right. Individually, one can go down the tunnel and stand at the mouth of the cave and maybe take a step or two into the spirit world and bring back some messages. But if we are to live in contact with that, it must have the critical mass of all of us. And that means a personal commitment from each and every human being on this planet to deepen and mature, to develop in wisdom as they progress through their lives, to not accept, I'm content to stay stuck where I'm at. Because as anybody here have families? Yeah. As any of you who have families know, stuck people don't only affect themselves. The idea that it's like your individual right to stay stuck if you'd like, and that it's only about you, is just another illusion on the road to disillusionment that passing through the tunnel leads to. Your choosing to stay stuck hurts everyone you love. Your choosing to stay stuck hurts everyone you love. There have been times in my life where the journey seemed too hard and not worth it just for me. But that realization that my son, for instance, was going to live in the consequences of my refusal to get unstuck, that did it for me. I don't know what will do it for you, but I bet there are a few people in your life who you love that much, who you love enough to get unstuck for. Amen.
Until next time, thank you for joining us on The Pulpiteer. If you enjoyed the podcast, you can help others like it by liking and subscribing. If you'd like to support the podcast directly, you can make a donation at sangabrieluu.org/give. The Pulpiteer podcast is a production of the San Gabriel Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Georgetown, Texas. The podcast is hosted by Spotify, and theme music is by John Faber. Our live recording tech crew this week was Frank Sanders, Rob Berthold, Keith Hutchinson, and Andrea McDaniel. The podcast is produced and performed by Eric Hepburn. See you next time.